Okay, in this video I want to talk about how to add and subtract polynomials, and luckily we just got done talking about a bunch of definitions. We're actually going to pull that together with something we've talked about before, which is adding like terms. So we talked about adding like terms when we were talking about adding square roots. We're going to do exactly the same thing for polynomials, and we just talked about what do we mean by terms. We mean the things that are being added up are called terms. And so if two of those are alike, then we should add them. We should add like terms. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, I see a polynomial plus a polynomial. Both of them happen to be trinomials. It turns out that doesn't matter. All that does matter is that we have two sums added together, and so we have an associative property that says you don't actually need to put the parentheses there. So this means exactly the same thing as x cubed plus 3x squared minus 5 plus x squared plus 2x minus 1. We also have a commutative property that says you can shuffle the order if you want. And so I should probably shuffle the order and put things that look alike together. So I'm going to underline them as I go to make sure I get all of them. I have an x cubed. That's the only x cubed I see, so he's the only one like that. I see x squared a couple of places. Let's add those together. I see an x to the first power. And then the leftovers. I see a minus 5 and a minus 1. And it's up to you how you want to write this, if you want to write it as plus a negative or just minus 5, minus 1. As long as you remember that the 5 was negative, the 1 was negative, everything else in this particular problem was positive. That's fine. Okay, and now let's try and combine our like terms. 3 of something plus implied 1 of something would be 4 of that something. So make sure you're not trying to add 3x squared plus x squared and turn it into x to the 4th. No, that doesn't work. 3 apples plus apple is 4 apples. It's not apples squared or something. So 3 plus 1 would be 4 of these. Plus 2x, and negative 5 and negative 1 would be a total of negative 6. $5 debt and another $1 debt is a total of $6 debt. Okay, another way that you can think about this if you wanted to, if I wanted to write yet more steps, 3x squared plus x squared is the same as 3x squared plus 1x squared, which is the distributive property on 3 plus 1x squared, which is where the 4x squared is coming from. I should point out, don't feel like you have to write every single step that I wrote in. If you feel comfortable with going from this step to this step, by all means go ahead. Just make sure you're doing every step, make sure you're getting the same answer. So I usually suggest probably writing more steps when you're first learning a method. Once you've got a little more experience under your belt, feel free to skip some steps. Once you know what it's supposed to look like, great. Maybe we could skip this step. Okay. Next thing I'm going to look at, instead of adding, what if I had to subtract two polynomials? So polynomial minus polynomial. And I'm actually just going to keep the same 2 and just write this as a subtraction. So let's see what's different and what's the same if I change the polynomials to be subtracted from each other. Okay. Again, I'm going to write in an extra step that may or may not be necessary. Keep in mind the subtraction is the same as adding negative 1 times something. And I've intentionally written subtraction as adding a negative so that it's more clear. Order of operations would say you have to do the multiplication, you have to make this thing negative before you add it to the other guy. So before we do anything else, when we see a minus parentheses, we're going to have to actually distribute the minus. Put the minus in front of each piece of the polynomial, in front of each term of the polynomial. And that's basically just our distributive property, -1, or this negative sign if you prefer, multiplied by each individual term. Okay, and so then after that's done, I should be able to erase the parentheses, because everything will just be added together. We need -1 times x squared, which would be -x squared. We have -1 times 2x, which would be -2x. We have -1 times -1, which would be +1. So essentially we're taking the right-hand polynomial when we're subtracting, and we're flipping all of its signs. So positive, positive, negative flips to negative, negative, positive. And then I do the same exact step as adding, which is to combine like terms. So I see an x squared in 2 places, and I see constants in 2 places. Everything else is kind of by itself. There's only one x to the third, there's only one x to the first. So our only x to the third, I'm going to go ahead and keep writing my middle step in, 3x squared minus x squared. If you can do that in your head and say, oh, that's 2x squared, great, skip this step. Jump straight to 2x squared. Okay, let's see, next in order would be x to the first. Our only x to the first is minus 2x. And our constants, I haven't written down yet, -5 plus 1. So if we have a $5 debt and we pay $1, then we now have a $4 debt. So take away $1 of our debt. So this would be the answer for subtracting those two polynomials.